You're listening to Searching for More, a podcast of the Diocese of Arlington. On this episode, during National Volunteer Month, hear Debra Beard, Director of Volunteers for Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Arlington, highlight the incredible work of Catholic Charities, more than 2,500 active volunteers during the past year amidst the pandemic.
Being able to put yourself into action and to try and make a small impact was very important to our volunteers.
Hear Debra talk about what motivates Catholic Charities and its volunteers to selflessly serve as she offers inspiring stories from the last year. This episode's host is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington.
Right. So, Debra, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invitation.
Not a problem. So I'm really excited to talk about this. One, it's National Volunteer Month, but the volunteer effort of the diocese in general, but particularly within Catholic Charities where you work, has been tremendous over this last year. A lot of people have been, stepping up to the plate in ways that we had never hoped that we would need them to, but they certainly have. Before we dig into kind of the meat of it all, could you give people a sense, for Catholic Charities at least, the size and the scope of the volunteer effort that's going on there?
Oh, sure. So the volunteers are the heart and soul of Catholic Charities. They're willing and faith-filled servants. They support our mission in professions as teachers, as doctors, nurses, attorneys, mentors, fundraisers, and it goes on. We have many retirees who hold ongoing volunteer commitments, but we have families and youth that also provide short-term support in our food programs and other areas.
Yeah.
They all fill critical roles across our ministry, serving the poor and vulnerable to direct and indirect ways.
Yeah.
With the support of our skilled and professional staff. While you do not need to be Catholic to serve, it is Christ who informs our mission at Catholic Charities, and the gospel call to love our neighbors is what our volunteers are responding to.
Yeah. Yeah, and is that something you hear from them a lot when you talk to volunteers, that the kind of the heart of the mission? One thing we talk about sometimes is that Catholic Charities is not a social agency or something. It's like that there are secular agencies that do, good for the common good. We have a different starting point with why we do it. Is that something you kind of really hear from the volunteers about?
Very much so, particularly with our parish partners when they're looking for service opportunities for their confirmation groups. We have parents who are looking to instill their faith and the value of serving within their youth, and they come to us. And then retirees who are looking to fulfill their purpose and reflect their faith and service. While they're not reporting to a job, they can make the choices of where they want to be and how they want to serve, and contribute and express their faith.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot when I talk to volunteers who are retired, because I think they worry. I think the natural worry is, well, I spent my whole life building a skill set in whatever profession I had, and then that just goes away. When really, no, you can channel that in some other way, and it can be in all kinds of different ways. But I've heard that a lot from different volunteers who are just grateful that, hey, I can keep doing the parts I liked most about my job and also ignore the things I didn't like.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. But for them, they get to just kind of live out that ministry. You had mentioned something a second ago about Parish Partners. Could you describe what that is and how that works?
Oh, well, Catholic Charities is very appreciative and very grateful for our partnerships with our 70 plus parishes and missions. We partner with them in providing services at the parishes in terms like English classes, citizenship classes. We have mental health clinicians that are in some of the parishes. And then, of course, the St. Lucie Project is in deep partnership with them, giving parishes the opportunity to feed the hungry through our food drives, but also they're a great source, a deep well of support for our volunteers.
Yeah. This last year has been interesting in that with COVID, a lot of people who are like these retirees that you're talking about, they weren't necessarily able to volunteer if they were high risk, or they might have had a medical condition and stuff. So your volunteer pool changed a little bit, if I understand correctly, and you had to draw on a lot of new volunteers, some younger volunteers. Could you talk a little bit about what that looked like and how that functioned?
Well, early on in the pandemic, there was very little information, and it was scary.
Yeah.
And we didn't want anyone to be at risk of contracting this illness, particularly our vulnerable volunteers. We're serving the vulnerable, but we were also found ourselves in a position where those who were serving were vulnerable. So we asked them to refrain from volunteering.
Yeah.
And that reduced our labor pool significantly.
Was that hard?
You're
the volunteer coordinator for, or director of volunteers for Catholic Charities. To ask someone not to volunteer is the antithetical to the mission that you have. Was that challenging for you personally?
Yes, but the volunteers, the senior volunteers, appreciated that, because our volunteers are filled with, they're very dedicated and very committed, and many of them are felt obligated to serve, and so. Letting them know that their health and well-being was our first priority, provided a sense of relief to them, and that they would be welcome back when the time was right.
Yeah.
And many of them have returned gloriously.
Yeah.
That they've been vaccinated.
It had to be reaffirming for them too, that you're looking out for them, that we're not just trying, expect them to show up even if they're at risk. And you're right, there was a time period especially where what this disease is, how you got it, we had no idea. We had no idea what was going on. So that was good of you all to be that respectful. But was there, so we'll talk about this new pool of volunteers that came in, because we know the ministries and services of Catholic Charities increased during the pandemic. So if you're telling some, please don't come in, it wouldn't necessarily be safe. How did you accomplish that task?
Well, initially we had to really rely on our staff,
who
just stepped up and worked very hard, particularly at the St. Lucie Project. Where we knew that those who were already vulnerable and food insecure were going to be even at greater risk. And so the decision to stay open was a difficult one.
Yeah.
But we were overwhelmed by the response of individuals when the word was out that we were continuing to keep our food pantries open, that we had safety protocols in place. Many who were teleworking, many young adults, many families who had youth at home called us up, and they wanted to engage in serving compassionately in the community. So it was surprising initially, and at some points we were challenged to be able to find enough positions for people to serve, because there were some circumstances where we didn't have the capability to provide virtual opportunities. That grew in time.
Yeah.
But initially, we had so many offers for individuals to drive food around, to deliver food, and that helped us expand a program to help new moms.
Yeah. Our numbers were that there was this last year there was something like 2,500 active volunteers, 1,100 of which were new.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge testament. Like when we talk about the Bishop's Lenten Appeal, for instance, I always try to remind, because I'll be asked to go to parishes and speak about it and so on. I always remind people that the work that you see done is because of you. Like, you have generously provided funds to the BLA, and thus we're able to do these things. It's because of you that we're able to do this. And so with the work that Catholic Charities did over this last year, which got media attention and everything, it was exceptional. It was not ordinary. It was an exceptional amount of output. Right. It's because 1,100 new people stepped forward to fill in, and 2,500 people throughout our diocese were serving. That's an incredible testament to our faith and to our love of the poor. And it was very heartwarming to see those kinds of numbers.
Well, it's very affirming, but this is a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the isolation and the fear was very palpable, and being able to put yourself into action and to try and make a small impact was very important to our volunteers. On a normal year, like 2019, the impact of our volunteers is translated into about 63,000 hours of service annually.
Wow.
And during the pandemic, we saw just a slight drop in that, and we saw 59,000 hours in the year of the pandemic.
That's incredible. But I know the amount of people that were served, I mean, that's increasing. And we even had people who were normally helping provide service all of a sudden were needing service. I mean, there were people who are really living on the edge there of stability, and all of a sudden they're in line for assistance when previously they were helping distribute it, which, what a testament to them, that they give up their time when obviously, folks in that position are often working a lot of hours, they're working multiple jobs, and yet they're volunteering, and then the pandemic hits and it's our opportunity to serve them. I mean, what a blessing it is for us to be able to do that.
You're absolutely right.
And you mentioned the St. Lucie Food Project. So I think in a normal year, in the last year or two, it's like something 1.3 million pounds of food distributed. What was it like for the volunteers? How did that food distribution go? Because that's an incredible number. I mean, that's a lot of people receiving a lot of food assistance. And again, it's the most basic of needs, right? How did that go for the volunteers? What was that experience like?
Well, just to give you some context, in pre-pandemic, we calculate our needs based on Feeding America's statistics for food insecure.
Okay.
Those are typically about 2 years behind. In the diocese, there are approximately, according to our statistics, about 250,000 people, 200,000 who are food insecure. If you break,
that's in our diocese?
That's in our diocese,
okay.
in the 21 counties of our diocese.
That's a lot of people.
If you were to break that down even smaller, you think about Fairfax County. The food insecurity rate there is about 5%, which translates into about 76,000 people, half of which are children. In a given year, the St. Lucie Project distributes like you said, 1.3 million pounds of food. This year we have, through the pandemic, which was March through December, we distributed 1.6 million pounds of food.
Wow.
We found the demands of the pantries remained very high, almost triple what we typically distribute, and the number of sites that we've distributed to went from 60 to 85.
Wow. That's a huge increase, because a 0.3%, when you're talking about 1 million pounds of food, is 300,000 pounds of food. What does food insecure mean? Is that like their income is so low that they don't know they can provide food for the next day or the next week? Like, how does that, what does that mean?
That's a very common question, and food insecurity is just that. They're not certain where their next meal is going to come from.
Gee, so this is not just people who are poor but able to put food on the table. These are people that literally don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Well, when we have confirmation teams that would come into the St. Lucie Project pre-pandemic, we would explain it that, to kids, when you're hungry, what do you do when you come home from school? You open up your pantry and you search around for something that you want to eat. In a food insecure home, children may be relying solely on schools for their basic nutrition. Parents may skip their meals so that their children can eat. Kids may not have food on the weekends, or they'll have a lack, more importantly, they have a lack of access to healthy food. They'll have high starchy foods, high sugar foods, limited fruits and vegetables. Kind of filling food, but
it's not giving them the nutrients.
Because it's cheap and accessible.
Yeah.
So the St. Lucie Project really tries very hard to get access to fruits and vegetables to be able to get out to our pantries, as well as a healthy selection of food items, non-perishable food items.
And they've got relatively new, like last year or two, industrial grade fridges and freezers or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that changes the world for them. I know that was a major announcement when we were able to get those things, because it changes what you're able to provide, like you said, to these folks in need.
Yeah, protein malnourishment is very problematic among the food insecure, and we would send cans of tuna or cans of chicken or peanut butter and beans and rice for protein. But now with our freezer, we've received numerous donations of frozen meat and chickens and beef and steaks that we're able to send out to the pantries. Just really increases the dignity of the individuals that we serve, and helping them have healthy food for them and for their children to grow.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing. And again, it's most basic. There were a number of needs that came up that were what we maybe call temporary where volunteers were serving kind of a new capacity. What were some of those temporary needs that were provided for and people were volunteering for during the pandemic?
Yes. Well, one of the first opportunities that came up for us was when the Gabriel Project reached out to us. We had new mothers that were coming home from the hospital with their newborn babies during the stay-at-home order. A very scary time, very vulnerable little babies. And there was a lack of diapers on the shelves.
Really, yeah.
And fortunately, we had some diapers that were stored because of our mobile response center.
Yeah.
And that program graciously partnered and offered to provide diapers to these parents. And then we had all of these drivers who wanted to help deliver food. We asked if they'd be willing to deliver diapers, and so we just codenamed it Operation Stork. And each week, moms would call in and let us know what size diapers they needed and for how many kids. And typically, they had, more than one child in the home in diapers. And we would pack them up at the warehouse and meet the drivers and send them off, with addresses and directions. And so that went on March through till almost July.
That really is an operation. The way Operation Stork, the way you're describing it functioning, it really is like a military operation almost to get supplies. That's amazing. I had to imagine that was very consoling for those moms. I mean, it's hard enough to be a mom, often single moms, like you're saying, and to not have something like diapers. I mean, I'm a parent of 3 little ones. To not have diapers would be a big challenge, very scary. Very scary. Were there other kind of temporary needs, or was that maybe the biggest one?
Well, the Mother of Mercy Clinic had both our mental health services and our medical services were able to transition to telehealth, but they also were providing COVID testing in the short term during the stay-at-home order. Interestingly, the Christ House residents rely on the community meal for the homeless that our community has provided for over 40 years every single night.
Yeah.
Those transitioned to a ready-to-eat bag lunch that you would just get from the kitchen and leave.
Right.
So we found there to be a need for feeding the Christ House residents, and so our community stepped in and we asked if some of these members would like to prepare a hot meal for the residents, and everybody responded. We had some restaurants that delivered food every week, and until we kind of got it organized, and now we have families and individuals who prepare a hot meal and drop it off so the residents have a hearty hot meal.
That's wonderful. That's really beautiful. So when you coordinate volunteers for the most vulnerable people in our community, you've seen it all, I'm sure, but this last year, what was the most surprising to you?
Aside from the cascading impact of COVID and the alarming number of those who became sick and tragically passed away, I have to say, being witness to such generosity and support in such a great time of need.
Yeah.
It's a privilege working for Catholic Charities because on a daily basis, I have the privilege of seeing the expression of Christ's love in service. But the way people responded during this pandemic was the greatest blessing and the biggest surprise.
Yeah.
Catholic Charities has always understood the importance of service. Our business model is built on understanding we always want to be able to provide opportunities for our community to serve, and it remains critically important during this time more than ever. And we're embracing the challenge to creatively imagine how to expand our ministries so that we can grow in our ability to serve in meeting the needs of the poor, and grow in our ability to embrace more volunteers in that mission, because united and collectively we can do so much more good.
Yeah. And when you look to the future down the road, what are some things that have happened that you think you'll take with you? It could be kind of big or small things, but you've seen a lot, you've had to adjust a lot. Is there anything that you see maybe continuing. It could be those young people maybe staying involved, or anything that you've seen that you feel like will carry with you.
I think like most businesses, we have learned that this hybrid model of service can be very effective.
Yeah.
The transition to telehealth has expanded our reach for those in the rural parts of the diocese. One of the when we talk about the casualties of the pandemic, two of the greatest areas are increased food insecurity, but also poor mental health. And being able to provide teletherapy and telehealth to individuals has been significant. But within our newcomer services, being able to provide more classes because teachers are willing and able to teach virtually has increased the number of individuals who we can teach English to and help along their way on their citizenship classes. So as we gain more technological resources, we'll be able to expand our services because of that. So that has been a new opportunity.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So if someone's listening and they feel like, you know what, the pandemic isn't over and the needs are going to continue well after pandemic as they were there before the pandemic, they want to help out. What's the best way to reach out? Because I think a lot of people, they want to help, but they're like, what can I do? I'm not, an expert in this or that or whatever it might be. They don't know where to start. Who should they contact, or where should they go to kind of get a feel for where they might fit in the different volunteer opportunities?
Well, the first place to start is on our website, which is ccda.net. We have a volunteer button that will take you to our volunteer database where we have listed hundreds of service opportunities. Those opportunities are listed by program. So if a volunteer has a particular heart for feeding the hungry, they would explore opportunities under the St. Lucie Project, or if they were interested in serving at the Mother of Mercy Clinic, they would click there.
Okay.
That's the most efficient way. We have an email, volunteer@ccda.net. If you want to shoot us an email, we can set up an interview and help explore. We get calls at the St. Lucie Project all the time, in particular with families. There's one particular family that I can think of who's, the father had some serious health issues that put him in the vulnerable category, and they had kids at home that were virtually learning, and the isolation was really hard for them, and they just called us up and we need to get the kids out. Can we bring them to the warehouse? Normally we would just sort food in the mornings, but in the afternoons we were able to say, embrace families that were coming in just to get the kids out of the house and get them engaged in something productive. So even just calling, our volunteer coordinators at our different ministries and saying, I want to help. Can you find a place for me? That starts the conversation.
Yeah.
We really appreciate the depth and breadth of skills that our volunteers bring to us, and sometimes just having a conversation and exploring why they want to serve and what they want to do is better than just fitting them into a specific opportunity. So if there isn't an opportunity on the website and you have a particular need, just reach out to us and we'll chat.
So volunteer@ccda.net, or you can go to the website and peruse the different opportunities there. There's no end to the need, so there's lots of stuff there, I'm sure, where people can lend their hand, and it's, I know, very fulfilling for people. A lot of people that think about volunteering, or they volunteer just because a friend is doing something, find themselves doing it for a long time afterward. Debra, thank you so much. I want to thank you because you've worked very, very hard through this pandemic, and you worked hard before and you will after. But I know this has been a huge undertaking for you in coordinating the needs, and every day presented a different challenge. So I just, on behalf of those watching and the rest of us here at the Chancery, just thank you so much for all that you've done to make all of this service opportunity possible for people and for all those who have been helped through it. So you're the linchpin to a lot of the successes there. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I really just have to give a shout out to our incredible ministry staff and to our faithful servants who serve us every day. What we do is good and just, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
And our doors are open to anyone who wants to join us, because it only allows us to be able to expand our services.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for coming on the podcast and for telling us this great story.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
No problem.
You're listening to Searching for More. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, make sure you follow the Diocese and the Arlington Catholic Herald on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channels for regular videos that inspire, educate, and inform about the Catholic faith in our diocesan community.